Hey guys, so if you check out social media, you'll see a lot of the world's strongest man athletes are all heading out over to California for this year's competition. And what I thought I'd do today is bring you a little insight in what the athletes need to do between now and the 15th when the competition starts. So the next 2 days, the athletes are all arriving from all over the world to compete. And those days essentially are pretty free days. They'll be given an itinerary and then the real hard work starts. So the first big thing that happens will be the athletes meeting. Now, all the athletes will have to come down. There'll be all the TV people will be there, the head referees, the medical staff, everyone involved in the competition comes to this event. And this is a chance for athletes to ask questions, to understand what's going on. It's a real good opportunity for the newer athletes to ask questions, although most of them won't. It tends to be the older guys that will ask more questions. The referees will go through all the rules with the athletes. The doctor will introduce himself and explain what testing the athletes have to go through in terms of making sure they're physically fit enough to compete. And the TV staff will also go through a few things where they'll be explaining what time they need to do TV interviews with all the athletes, as well as the other types of media obligations that the athletes will need to do prior to competing at World's Strongest Man. So the TV interviews and photo shoots. Now this is the kind of stuff you see in between the events where the athletes are stood there. There'll be like a little bio of each athlete. And essentially, particularly for a lot of the new guys, this is some of them will find it exciting, some of them will find it quite tedious. The guys that don't speak fluent English, sometimes they're not as excited to do these type of things. You need to be allowed to get to know the athletes rather than them just being great athletes and great performers in terms of lifting. It's nice to know a little bit about them. So this is an opportunity for them to show their personality. They'll do various different things. You know, we've been taken all over the place. I've done photo shoots on top of skyscrapers in LA. Sometimes you're just in a dark room with a dark background and they'll spin you on a turntable or something like that. You do silly poses, whatever it might be, just to get good photo shots. And then the interviews with each athlete, there'll be a whole host of questions that the producers and the TV guys will go through for each athlete. And then they'll decide what they will use on the TV show. As well as the TV interviews, something that's new is more social media type interviews and challenges that the social media team for World's Strongest Man will get the guys doing. A good example of this that you guys may have seen are when the athletes are reading out mean comments on Twitter and responding to trolls, etc. They tend to get you doing a few different things each year, but this is an opportunity again to showcase the personalities of the guys and hopefully bring more fans to the sport. So the next thing that the athletes have to do is have their medical. Now this is something I really always actually enjoyed going to World's Strongest Man, and I think it's a great thing that they do, not just for the athletes, but for the show as well. Now, one thing that's very important, we have to understand a lot of these contests are done in extreme conditions. The temperatures that the athletes will be competing in, normally very, very hot climates. Being big 300 plus pound men, they need to be physically fit enough to perform under these conditions. And obviously physically fit enough to perform the implements and the events that the guys are going to be competing in. Now the medicals, every athlete will have had to do a medical back home with their family GP. Normally you have to have full blood tests, you need to have an ECG and then a physical from your doctor. All that information is then sent to the World's Strongest Man doctor, who will then do another test on you to make sure that you're physically fit enough still. Normally another ECG to make sure your heart's okay. They'll go through any injuries that you might have had in the past. So obviously, you know, I'm someone that ended up spending a lot of time in with the doctors, making sure they're aware of any of the physical mishaps that you might have had in the past. For most strongmen, it's going to be muscle tears, some joint issues, etc. But once the medicals are done, then the athletes have an opportunity to see the physios. Now, there's a great group of physios at World's Strongest Man. One of the best things about Worlds, again, that they do provide high quality staff to look after all these athletes. There's physios, chiropractors, osteos, so they are making sure that the guys are well looked after. And finally, the bit that all the athletes get excited for, the equipment testing. Now this is always fun and there's a lot of banter, a lot of gamesmanship going on, a lot of people trying to get in each other's heads. Obviously each group, we've seen the groups now, and each group individually will go down to the yard where they get to test their events for the group stages. Some of the more experienced guys will do very, very little in this. They don't want to touch any of the equipment. Some of the newer guys, it's a good idea to touch the equipment, particularly if you've never been to Worlds before or you've never used some of the events. They also need to get measured up for things like the squat. Obviously the weights are stripped right back. They're not expected to lift competition weights. It'll be maybe 150, 160 kilos. And the referees will make sure that they understand the heights that everyone needs. They'll be kind of telling the athletes what depth they expect people to be hitting, and they'll take the measurements so they can adjust the frames to make sure, well, if it's the frame squat, they adjust the frame. If it's the globe squat, then they'll adjust the platforms that they squat to. Sometimes they do that by either raising the platforms or they use mats to heighten or lower the level that the athletes go to. Some events that people never touch. No one really ever touches an Atlas stone. Most strongmen know how to do an Atlas stone. A lot of guys like to have a go at some of the overhead implements, particularly this year with it being a medley. I'd expect a lot of the guys just to want to get their hands on it and get a feel of how everything is. I remember when I had the car walk at World's Strongest Man, they couldn't actually make the car lighter. So, and it was one of my first, and I remember picking this car up and just seeing stars and kind of putting it down. And one of the guys in my group, a guy called Louis-Philippe Jean, was just laughing at me, expecting me to be rubbish at it. And when it came to competition, I blitzed it. And that's one of the hard things with a lot of heavy events that we do in Strongman. You need to be in that right frame of mind. So I'm someone that doesn't like to touch too many of the bits of kit in the yard because I like to get into the right frame of mind of competition, focus, making sure that I'm fired up and ready to go. Lifting those kind of weights when you're not ready is just stupidly hard. But I have seen some crazily impressive feats of strength in the yard. Remember Zadrunas picking up the Africa stone once and almost just bicep curling it up. Other athletes like Mariusz Pudzianowski, he'd try everything. He was so determined, and if there was events that he didn't really feel confident on, he'd go back later on and talk to the referees and ask if he was allowed to try and keep practicing and getting better at them. So the referees do give you that opportunity. If you aren't comfortable or you're not comfortable lifting in front of all the guys, they do allow them to come back later on their own and maybe get a bit more of a feel. But it's weighing up the risks of, do you expend that energy trying to get better at the implements, or do you save your energy and wait till competition? So as well as all that, the athletes obviously will be trying to make sure they're getting their nutrition in, staying hydrated, particularly in these, heated conditions. I've been at World's Strongest Man and the temperature's been up near 40 and the humidity is ridiculous. It's another level. So you really do need to make sure your food is on point, your hydration is on point, and obviously they're just trying to stay relaxed and kind of almost take their mind off the competition at some points, because it is a slow, long, drawn out process. You've got these 3 days of doing all these different things, and then the competition will start, and it's only a few events a day. So there's a lot of time in between. They'll have to make sure they look after their bodies, make sure mentally they stay relaxed. It's going to be an exciting competition this year. It's a really stacked lineup, 25 of the absolute strongest men on the planet. We've all had fun picking our predictions, and that's the fun bit. Now we get to see who can perform. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be an amazing show. Make sure you tune into our videos. We're bringing you lots of updates throughout the week. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, you hit that notification bell, and we'll see you guys soon.